They tend to be brief and weak. In this case, they have so far been weak and have not reached the ground as tornadoes, but they have not been brief. And so that's the part that has just been keeping us very busy watching these and making sure that we are keeping you prepared and safe, because the next one could be stronger. It could reach the ground. It could cause damage. So far, we have not had any damage or injury reports, and we'd like to keep it that way. So this warning now is for Polk County. It is southwestern Polk County, and you can see the bands that are moving around it, and it is close to Fort Meade, so we are getting into a more heavily populated area. As we move in here, we've got Fort Meade, Bartow, across 17. I'm gonna go back and take the radar off so we can get a better look at the towns within this warning area. Okay, so it's between Fort Meade and Bartow. These cells have been moving at about 30 to 35 miles per hour. And if you look in this area, we're talking Bowling Green is here, Pembroke, Bartow, Mulberry, all within this warning. So we are starting in Hardee County and then working our way north to northwest into Polk County. I'm going to take a look at the velocity, the storm velocity, which again, this is showing us not the rainfall. Well, I'm still on rainfall right now, but we are going to be looking at the wind direction, and that is our velocity. And we're looking at the red versus the green. In this case, this is one of the weaker ones that we've looked at. Earlier today, we were seeing bright red next to extremely bright green. I won't say green, bright green 5 times. So this is better news here that this one is a bit weaker than what we were looking at earlier. And again, it's the wind moving in opposite directions right next to each other that we're seeing as a storm signature here on this map. It's not rainfall, and it's just north of Bowling Green, right near County Line Road, near Old Bowling Green Road, and it is still south here of Fort Meade, but it will be moving north-northwest. And so that means Hutchins Road and into Peoples Road, New Hope Road, all just south of Fort Meade, are going to notice at a minimum some winds and some heavy rain, winds picking up and some heavy rain moving through. So the important thing to do is to stay indoors until this passes and stay safe. Polk County has had some rain moving in just more recently, but hasn't had the bulk of the rain so far as we've been working our way through this through the system moving through today. Our northern counties, even Citrus County, northern Citrus, hasn't really seen all that much yet as far as rainfall goes, but is just about covering our entire area now. Put this in motion and you can see how it has just barely started to move across almost all of Polk County and almost all of Highlands County, but not quite Citrus. So we will be fully inundated with rainfall shortly and continue to be inundated with rain, and then there'll be variations in the intensity of rain throughout the rest of today and into the night and tomorrow, with that chance in the outer rain bands for these isolated, weak, and hopefully brief tornadoes. But so far, like I said, we have yet to have any damage reports or injury reports. And what reports we have been getting back from the Skywarn spotter or spotters, I'm not sure if it's one or more than one person who's been out there, they have been reporting either funnel clouds or rotation in a wall cloud, but no contact with the land rotating from above, so it has not been actual tornadoes. So again, we continue to monitor these because it certainly can happen with any of these storms as they're moving through. Again, we are looking at many hours of rainfall. We approach high tide, which gives us one of our next serious concerns about the storm, which is storm surge flooding. We already have reports in several areas of flooding and of storm surge flooding, starting from the south in Inglewood and then moving north through Pinellas County. We've also had reports in Tierra Verde with storm surge going over the canal wall. What am I missing? Clearwater and...
Yep. Clearwater, basically where JJ is, he said that he was checking out the area near the Vinoy. He said there was flooding over there.
And he saw some tree limbs. It didn't sound like large trees or anything like that, but tree limbs.
And I don't know if we have the website. We have it. Okay, so we're going to pull up this website really quick, Shay. So while we don't have video right now of Bayshore Boulevard, we do have this map here. It will pop up any second. There we go. This is the city of Tampa's map. It shows active flooding. The blue dots, if we zoom in, yep, right there. So those blue dots right there show confirmed flooding. And the Tampa Police Department did just say they are going to be closing Bayshore Boulevard from Platt Street to Bay Boulevard, along with numerous side streets due to flooding. They are asking that you do not drive in this area. Please avoid the area. Don't drive on the roadways because of all this standing water. It's obviously a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid that area.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting map. I had never seen this map before. I'm not sure if this is new or, but this is great because this gives us an idea of what's happening on Bayshore. And we know Bayshore does flood quite frequently, you know. Also, we want to take a look here. This is Clearwater Beach by Frenchie's Rockaway Grill. You can see a video here of some of the water pushing up. Looks like that water is from the Gulf that is just pushing up from the beach. You can see people are walking around there. And it does look like the surf is pretty rough, but it doesn't look too terrible.
No, it doesn't look too extreme. And I think that's why we are seeing as many people as we are. You know, they're probably looking at it and thinking, okay, this isn't so bad. Let's go take a look, take a walk out there and check it out. And things can change pretty rapidly. And the other thing to keep in mind is we are seeing lightning with these storm cells, with these little embedded storm cells in the outer bands. And we know that lightning is extremely dangerous, and
absolutely
just can't emphasize enough, as interesting as it may seem, and you may have a little cabin fever when it's, you know, wet and rainy days like this, but it is best to stay indoors. We really don't want to start changing this coverage from, you know, just, hey, it's a bunch of rain out here, to look at people getting hurt.
And I think the thing that people aren't thinking about too is, even though it doesn't look that choppy, all that water coming in, you're standing in water. If lightning strikes, that is not a good recipe.
No, not at all.
It's not good,
Yeah. And we are going to continue to have very high coverage of rain. It may be lighter at some points and than others. We may even get some breaks in the rain at times tomorrow. I would say, at least for the next maybe 6 to 8 hours, I'd say the rain is going to be pretty consistent across much of the area. In fact, even our rain planner here is showing about 80 to 100% coverage of rain through 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I think at that point we'll start to see more breaks in the rain and a little bit of improvement. When it comes to the wind, this is much less of a wind event than it is a rain event. Not concerned about large, widespread damage from wind. We may see those small limbs and, you know, bunches of leaves and that kind of debris that comes down, but not necessarily any widespread damage as a result of wind, unless there is an active tornado. So we've got 47 mile per hour maximum sustained winds around St. Pete right now. We are going to continue to see our highest wind speeds and our highest wind gusts right through about sunset, and then it starts improving and will continue to improve from that point forward. We may still have gusty winds tomorrow, but we're not going to have tropical storm force winds tomorrow. It will be a great improvement from even what we're experiencing today, which isn't all that dramatic overall. And as far as our rainfall totals, just to keep this in perspective, again, we're looking at several inches of rain. I know some of the reports that we're getting are much higher than this. And so that's a possibility. I don't know that the numbers matter as much as being aware that flooding is possible, and it's more likely the closer you are to the coast. And what I'm really trying to show you here is about the amount of rain that we're expecting today versus tomorrow. So this is until 11 o'clock tonight, we're looking at maybe 1 to 3 inches of rain. But from 11 o'clock tonight to 10 o'clock tomorrow night, we're looking at an additional 2 to 3 inches of rain and maybe more along the coast. So there is a chance we'll see more rain overnight tonight and into the day tomorrow than we'll experience today. So even though we're getting started today, the rain may be, and the flooding could be from freshwater more significant tomorrow. Not that it will be, but it could be. So again, the storm surge issues we are paying a lot of attention to right now because we're coming up on high tide, and then we'll see some improvement later on this evening. High tide is early this afternoon, around 2 o'clock in Hillsborough Bay. That time, though, varies quite a bit as you move up and down the coast. And then we will head into low tide. Conditions will improve for a bit. And then tomorrow, we will have another high tide, and we will continue raining. We'll have an onshore flow, but shouldn't be quite as significant because we won't have the pressure of the storm approaching also contributing to it.
We do have some new video that just came in from Fort Myers. Here we go. This is some serious flooding happening down there right now. So this is video we just got in, cars stuck in the water there. And this is, again, a big reason why we always tell you do not drive through flooded waters. So you've also got tow trucks that are attempting to pull them away, but the tow trucks are also not necessarily underwater, but they're struggling there. It's just not a good idea to drive through water. There's just so many dangerous situations that could happen. You know, you get stuck, your car could be, washed away. That has definitely happened to folks, and it just can happen so quickly. And then this is, of course, from Fort Myers Beach. These are incredible images. And this is, an area that saw flooding and saw major damage from Hurricane Ian 2 years ago. Serious flooding right now going into restaurants and businesses on the beach. Again, this was an area that was hit really hard during Hurricane Ian. I was down there 2 years ago. Times Square in that area was wiped out. The pier was wiped out. Businesses, folks living on Fort Myers Beach, they have been dealing with a lot. So any additional, damage is going to be devastating to them. Now, this is video from Naples, sent in about an hour ago. You can see the waves out there, even some surfers catching some waves. This happens every time we have a storm. You know, a lot of folks want to get out there, get into the water because these types of waves are ones that you don't see quite often unless a storm is coming through. So I get why people are enticed by that. But of course, it's also not the best idea to be out, in high surf because it can be very dangerous, especially if you're not familiar with those types of waves. So, definitely something to keep an eye on. We want to take a moment also to remind you to download our ABC Action News app. Go ahead and scan this QR code that's on your screen. It's going to bring you to a link to learn how to download both our mobile app, where you can get up-to-date information on Tropical Storm Debby and also other local news, as well as how to download ABC Action News Plus on your favorite connected device. These are great tools to have, especially if you lose power. You do not have to miss a minute of our coverage. And our coverage has been quite extensive. We've been watching several tornado watches and warnings. I don't believe that we have any watches right now. Is that correct? Or any warnings right now? We do have, or did one just pop up, Shay?
So we still have the warning that is in, yes. So let me show you the warning. And then we've also still have the watch, a tornado watch in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. And the warning is where you're seeing the bright red square that is in southeastern Polk County. And so again, I'm zooming in here. This is from Fort Meade on through Bartow, and this is up and down 17. When you see where the rainfall is, which I'll show you in just a second, but actually I'm going to show you this because this is more telling. This area right here is where the rotation is. And so this will be moving off to the north to northwest in this general area, but this is not it's showing winds moving in the opposite direction, which is showing the chance for rotation. And again, as we've been watching the chance for these storms to develop and these radar indicated tornado warnings throughout this morning and now into this afternoon, this is typically what we see with these tropical systems. So this is not out of the ordinary. The good news is so far we have not had any reports of damage or injuries. The reports that we've had from the Skywarn spotters have been that they've seen funnel clouds and rotating wall clouds, but not tornadoes reaching the ground, or not rotation reaching the ground. Either way, we continue to monitor all of these warnings as they come up, and keep you posted and keep you informed. And it is best right now, really, to stay indoors. So I see Dennis has come in and he is chomping at the bit.
Yes, he is.
He is chomping at the bit.
He's ready.
Well, speaking of chomping at the bit, you brought in snacks.
Yes. Yes, I did. I mean, you have to remain, the sustenance level has to be high. We're going to be on for a while. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great job, Shay, by the way. I mean, as I was getting ready, I did get about a 2-hour nap, and I was watching, and during that tornado warning, I mean, seriously, props, because tornado warnings are a scary thing. I mean, we all know that, especially at nighttime. But during the day, I was literally watching and watching and watching, and these warnings have a tendency to extend along the outer part of these tropical systems. I mean, if you think about it, imagine the old figure skater analogy, right? When you got that skater, whatever the heck it's called, when they do that really, really fast spin. Now, what happens is usually the energy on the outside of it is usually a little bit faster. If you think about the spin, the speed. So what you get is you get more rotation on the outside, and often that is where these tornado warnings pop. Now, by the way, we're coming up in the 20-year anniversary of Charlie. Can you believe that? Hurricane Charlie next week was 20 years ago. And I bring that up because when Charlie moved on shore, we had dozens of tornadoes in the exact same spot. It was literally like a conga line that went along the outside of those tornado warnings. And while we're not seeing anything like that now, we will continue to see this outer band go north, and there's absolutely no reason to think that we're not going to see more tornado warnings through the afternoon and into the evening. Now, I would tell you, I do think the majority, interestingly enough, at least right now, will remain across those inland areas. So anywhere from, east of I-75. We will see if anything pops a little bit closer, but at this point, they are not. So again, Shay, why don't you go ahead and catch your breath and take a drink or whatever you want to do, and she'll be back in a couple of minutes. But I want to go over some of the things that are going on and how we've been changing throughout the day. Clearly, and I just drove in a little while ago, and as I was driving in, I was thinking, yeah, it feels like I'm driving in the middle of a very heavy afternoon thunderstorm. Typically, you don't get a lot of lightning with tropical systems. You get some, but you don't get a lot, okay? So as we go through the afternoon, you'll hear some thunder rumbling at times, but overall, it is just tropical downpours that you'll get a band, and then it'll break, and then you'll get another band as the center of the storm, not an eye, there is no eye, although winds are still at 65 miles an hour. So there may be developing an eye in the next 10, 15 miles an hour if it goes that high, and we think it will. As this moves north, we will continue to see an intensifying system, which will cause these bands to also get stronger. So as I heard Shay and Heather just mention, look, there is absolutely no reason for you to be out this afternoon. I mean, it is messy. I mean, yes, it is like an afternoon thunderstorm, but it's like a 12-hour afternoon thunderstorm. I mean, right, the rain is just really coming down. And I was telling my son this too, he's just learning to drive. 16-year-old, and as I was driving in too, and remember this, if you do have to go out, remember on the right side of the roads, the waters are really flooding and really ponding. So if you like to drive in the right lane, which a lot of the slower drivers should, just remember, pretty much the entire way that I came in from Palm Harbor to downtown, we had flooding on the right side of the road. So just kind of be aware of that. If you absolutely positively have to go out, hopefully you won't have to. So I do want to talk a little bit more about the storms and the tornado warnings that are extending down. There's also one east of Fort Myers, or has been throughout the day. Center right here, okay? And these bands are going to just kind of going to extend for the next, for our area, probably another 12 to 18 hours before this finally moves on shore tomorrow morning around 8 o'clock. So from Mulberry to Fort Meade over to Bowling Green, when you get tornado warnings, here's the good news. All right, when you get tornado warnings with a tropical system, like I mentioned with Charlie, when we literally had 20, 30 some odd stretched out, I've never seen anything like it in the 30 years I've been here. Not a single one of those tornadoes actually made it down to the ground. There was never, now, I say that, it was in a very rural part of Southern Highlands County and DeSoto County, so I guess it's possible they did and there was just nobody there to see it. It's the whole, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a noise? But at the end of the day, there was still numerous tornado warnings. And as we were looking, and Shay and I were looking at this, I mean, there's your rotation right there. It's pretty clear, you know, as you get your green and your red colors. Liken yourself to being on one of those little merry-go-rounds. You know, the merry-go-rounds that you used to play on when you were a kid and your friends would make it go extra fast and you'd throw up because you couldn't get off. Remember those? Well, think about it. When you're in the middle of that, okay, as you're going one way, the air is coming toward you. As you're going on the backside, the air is going away from you. That's the rotation. And that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing, this is, when you look at this radar, you're not looking at rain like a typical radar. You're looking at air. You're looking at motion of wind, right? So when the air is moving away from the radar site, it's red. And when it's moving toward, it's green. And then you have your little circular rotation, which, as Shay's been mentioning, and I agree with her completely, there's not a lot of rotation with this. But the radars these days are so good. They're so able to see spin, even if that spin isn't much and it's just kind of falling down from the cloud as a funnel cloud, right? It's still going to show up on here. And it's up to the Weather Service to say, okay, well, that one is somewhat strong, that one isn't. And then, of course, the storm spotters, as Shay also mentioned, they're out there chasing it, because you know storm chasers, they love to be out here during this stuff, and they're going to be looking for it. So at this point, and I was checking Twitter, I just checked with our assignment desk, and by the way, this coverage that we're doing, that we've been doing, that we're going to continue to do, this is pretty much the fly by the seat of your pants coverage. Like, we just kind of pick up and go. And maybe we'll jump to a reporter. And maybe somebody will come in and give us an update. Or maybe you will send us an update on social media, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case, or we see something on Twitter, that we hear that there is some damage in some place, or flooding in some place, or the roads are closed in some place. I mean, we depend on you. This is a one-on-one thing here. This is no longer, oh, let's just turn on the TV and see what's happening, because now this is an interactive thing, especially when we do live broadcasts. So at this point, this rotation is marginal at best. Not really seeing anything that concerns me. Do I think there's going to be more? Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot more before this is said and done. All right, so this is the latest. This is as of the 2 o'clock advisory. So remember, every 3 hours we get updates. Actually, upon landfall, the Hurricane Center will actually send hourly updates on the fix as it gets closer. We're not quite there yet, because landfall is going to occur Big Bend-ish area tomorrow morning around 8 o'clock. So for our area, we're still under tropical storm warnings, right? And that makes a lot of sense, because our winds have, you know, been 30 to 45-ish. So certainly close enough to tropical storm to justify the warning. And there's more on the way, by the way. And then the hurricane warning for in the Big Bend area. And again, we have our reporters out. Mike Paluska is, like, old school folks will remember Don Gramez, Mr. Hunker Down, right? Well, Mike Paluska is turning into the new Don Gramez. He's the guy who goes around and really tries to find the center and bring home what you cannot and don't want to experience. Him and Paula Groen were actually with Adalia last year in Perry, which was hit really hard. I know we have a lot of viewers in the Perry area, believe it or not, because I got a ton of messages yesterday from folks who are following us on Instagram, on Facebook, and watching us on satellite in Perry, and they're nervous about it, justifiably, after what they had to go through last year, which they had about 130-mile-an-hour winds. This will not be that storm. So one other thing I want to mention, I think this is really important for the folks who are nervous about storm surge, okay? I know that a lot of phones went off about 2 hours ago urgent alert, storm surge warning, Pinellas County, storm surge warning, Hillsborough County, storm surge warning, Manatee County. The Weather Service extended the storm surge, okay? And what's the difference from the watch and the warning? Well, I want to mention something because I think this is interesting. So when you see these numbers of 2 to 4 feet and 3 to 5 feet, when you hear that forecast, and from this point on for the rest of your life, you will know this, and you probably didn't know this. That means it is the most, quote, the most reasonable worst case scenario issued by the Weather Service or the Hurricane Center. So this number of 2 to 4 feet is the most reasonable worst case scenario. So what they do, in a sense, and this makes sense, what they do is they tell you, okay, this is the worst it's going to be. We hope it's not going to be that bad, but prepare for this level. And I think that's important for you at home to know, because when you look at these numbers, and more often than not, knock on wood, more often than not, we don't get worst case scenarios, right? I mean, sometimes we do, but usually I think it's safe to say we're kind of more in the middle. So I hear it all the time. Well, you guys said 3 to 5 feet and we had 2.5 feet. Now, my original response is, yeah, and we're lucky. Aren't we happy about that? Why are you complaining? But the more reasonable expectation now is you need to know, if you live on the water, that these numbers are the most reasonable worst case scenario. So probably they're not going to be that bad, but you need to prepare like they will be. And I just think that's really, really important to know. And also when we're talking about storm surge, look, people who live in Land O'Lakes, you don't have to worry about storm surge. People who live in Bartow, you don't have to worry about storm surge. And there's a lot of new folks in the area. We all know there's a lot of new folks in the area coming in from up north, and they've never been through this stuff before. So storm surge has nothing to do with rainfall. Nothing. All right? Storm surge is nothing more than the water being pushed ashore, Gulf water, being pushed ashore from the storm. And here's in Fort Myers Beach. And you see the waves and the surf coming up. I mean, certainly nothing close to what they had with Ian, but that is an example of what it can look like. When you have a storm pushing water onshore, when the wind is coming in from that correct direction, and they now have an onshore flow in Fort Myers, and certainly there is some flooding issues going on there. But because that storm is northwest of them and moving away, obviously the winds are going to start to diminish. Now, the actual bands themselves, they're going to last for a long time, folks. I mean, we're going to be looking at these bands for another 12 hours. So let's go on back and talk more about, again, the storm surge for our area. So guys, there you go. So there is a look at, again, the purple area. That is our storm surge. And typically it's worst at high tide, which is really from a few hours ago until 6 o'clock tonight, okay? We're lucking out a little bit here. And let me tell you why. Because as the storm surge will be an issue this afternoon, most of our area, the winds are not onshore yet. The winds do not go onshore until the center of that storm has passed your east-west latitude. Remember, east-west is latitude, north-south is longitude. So what happens is, let's just use Bradenton as an example. Let's say the storm was right there. If it's south, the winds are blowing offshore, so the water would be pushed out. Once it goes north of that, the winds start to veer out of another direction and they eventually go onshore. Now, what's important to remember is the area in which that water is pushed. Look at the mouth of the bay, right? You need to have the wind coming in just at this angle to force that right on up toward the top of the bay. If it comes at another angle, it'll go in, but not as readily. So we're lucky that the high tide timings, which is from now until what, Shay, like 6 o'clock or so, ballpark. I mean, that's pretty much the time of high tides for our area, right? At that point, the majority of our area is still experiencing an offshore flow. And once it does begin to pass us and the winds come around, the tide will go down. There's a 6-hour difference from high to low tide, give or take. So if you're high tide at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, low tide would be 10 o'clock, right? Okay. And the next high tide is going to be about a foot lower than the one that we just had or are having now. That's just the astronomy of it. That's just the way it works out. So a lot of people have said, man, every single storm, we're having a king tide or we're having all these high tides and it's a new moon. And you're right, it seems to have played out that way. But in this particular case, I actually think we're going to catch a break. Look, we are going to see storm surge and some flooding in some areas. I just don't think it's going to be as bad, at least based on how high the tide is. And the storm is still far enough offshore, and it is getting stronger. So yes, we are looking at a surge, but just remember, my point is, these are the, what was it again? Most reasonable worst case scenario, okay? Flood watches, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is rainwater. This has nothing to do with Gulf water. This is flat out rainwater. And the way the banding sets up, it's impossible to predict in advance where that actual band is going to develop and who's going to see the most of it. Now, we do know that the strongest and the heaviest rainfall is going to be closer to the coast, as will the wind. And you can even see that by just looking at radar, and because it makes sense. The closer you are to the center, well, the heavier the winds are, and obviously the heavier the rain will be as well. So there's your center right there, and it's moving north-northwest at 13. Again, this is the latest advisory, just came out a couple of minutes ago. And with 65-mile-an-hour winds. Shay, can you push this onto social? The 2 o'clock advisory? Yes. Okay, thanks. And so, because I get it, there are some folks watching us on TV, there are some folks watching us on streaming, but there's some folks who absolutely just check us out on Instagram or Facebook. So we try to cover every platform known to man to get you the information that you need. So anyway, north-northwest at 13 miles an hour. And still not an eye, but you can clearly see where the center is. It definitely has that look. Now, this track is the same track that we've had since 11 o'clock this morning, and it will not change again until 5. And I'll go one further. It ain't going to change at all. This track is locked in. Now, might there be just a subtle wobble to the right as it gets to land? A lot of times that happens. But overall, this track is not going to change. The intensity is always the wild card, because it's at 65, expected to remain Cat 1, but we all know storms sometimes can get pretty strong very quickly. I talked about this last night on Facebook. Rapid intensification, that is a phenomenon I'm sure you've heard of, but it obviously just means when a storm in a 24-hour period gets significantly stronger. There's some parameters that go along with it. I won't bore you with the details, but obviously rapid intensification is something we want to avoid. There are models that try to predict that. And the rapid intensification prediction was at about 30% of it happening. So I prefer to say the other way around. There's a 70% chance it's not going to go through that rapid intensification. Again, I don't like to go toward worst case scenario. I mean, we talk about it, but why harp on it? Because the majority of the time, we don't see a worst case scenario. Sure, throw it out there, know that to prepare, but don't focus on worst case all the time. You will drive yourself crazy this hurricane season, because we got a lot more to go. I mean, we got several more months, and I have little doubt we're going to be doing this again 2 or 3 more times before the season is over. So a closer look right now. Want to talk to my families who have kids in Tallahassee, or family or friends in Tallahassee. All right, FAMU, FSU. My son just came down from Tallahassee. He was up there for his girlfriend's graduation this weekend. A lot of people up there, obviously, right? A lot of questions people had. Should we evacuate? Should we bring our kids home? Not evacuate. Should we bring our kids home from Tallahassee? Landfall is expected to be about 30, 35 miles southeast of Tallahassee. This is a very common storm track. They get these storms a lot. Don't minimize it, but this is not like there's anything they haven't seen on many, many occasions. There's a ton of trees in Tallahassee, and we all know typically when you get a storm like this, you're going to have some trees down, and you're going to have some power outages. It's just the nature of the beast. I will tell you, I talked about this last night on TV. I talked about it last night on DPL, as well as on social media. I said, if you were going to bring your kids home, under the better safe than sorry adage, I guess, last night was the night. Because now, I'm not saying that it's too late, but in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you guys got to do what you think is safe. In my opinion, the drive from Tallahassee to here would be every bit as dangerous as hanging out in your apartment or your dorm or wherever, waiting for this storm to go by. So, in my opinion, if you're like all of a sudden, you weren't watching yesterday, you weren't following, whatever the case may be, shame on you if you weren't. But regardless, if you're getting closer tomorrow morning and they're looking at a hurricane coming in, all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, should we leave? No, because now the rain is getting bad, and you're talking rain for a solid 4.5, 5 hours if they're driving down here. in my opinion, it's safer to keep people up there. I think you'll be on the northwest side. So historically, 65, 70 mile an hour wind gusts, maybe some trees, some power outages, but overall the threat, I believe, is much lower than the risk of driving down US 19 when you can't even see anything and the speed limit is 70 miles an hour and you got some crazy people going in and out, because they're not afraid of the rain. You know what I'm saying? All right, so there's a look at the spaghetti models. They're still pretty much locked in the same area. After it moves onshore, it's going to slow down. And then it becomes just a massive rainmaker for northern Florida. Jacksonville, Lake City, back toward the Panhandle, over toward Live Oak, Gainesville. I mean, they're going to get a lot of rain. Wind, not so much. Sure, tropical storm force winds. But once this moves onshore, it's going to weaken pretty quickly. Let's talk more about those winds. So throughout the evening, we would expect along the coast winds gusting to about 40 to 45 miles an hour. It's an afternoon thunderstorm, all right? Will your lights flicker? Mine already have. Sure, your lights are going to flicker. You might lose some power at times, but this is not the kind of wind that's going to cause any damage. It's just not. Might you have a couple of tree branches down? Yeah, sure, that sort of thing, right? But I wouldn't worry about anything in terms of the wind. Yes, it can get a little gusty at times, but this thing is just far enough offshore that it's not going to give us much more than winds from an afternoon thunderstorm. The rain, it's coming down, and the flooding potential is certainly a realistic thing, as is the surge potential in some of those isolated spots, okay? So through tomorrow morning and into Tuesday, we're still going to see some winds because the storm slows down, doesn't completely die out, so it stays very breezy on Tuesday, Monday morning, tomorrow morning. I was thinking about this, Shay. So I know a lot of schools, the teachers go back to school tomorrow. Kids don't, but the teachers do. I wonder if they're going to start talking about the possibility of maybe closing schools for teachers. I've not heard that. Assignment desk producers, why don't you check that out? I think that's kind of an interesting question. So apparently right now, Citrus County is the only one, which makes sense because, and by the way, classes are canceled on Monday at FSU as well. So at this point, yeah, Citrus County, they have closed the schools. I don't think Citrus is back in yet, don't believe, but I guess whoever is supposed to go doesn't have to go. And it makes sense because Citrus is going to be closer to where the storm makes landfall. All right, so then we go from there, rainfall potential. Now, this is from this point on, because I bet there's people saying, hey, yesterday you said there was going to be 7 or 8 inches of rain. Okay, we've already had 3 or 4 inches of rain in a lot of these spots. So you do the math and you're at 7 or 8 inches. So there it is, another 3 to 6 inches of rain expected from this point on. Inland areas, we'll say it again, are just not going to see that much rain. There's going to be a real sharp drop from where the edge of the heaviest rain is and then back out to the west where the storm is. All right, so this map is kind of cool. This shows you how far out the wind field goes, and right now, that actual wind field is showing some gusts along the coast. We've got some reporters out on the coast, and I think we should go check with them coming up in a second as well. But if you look at where the center is, and this is a perfect example. This is an east-weighted system. Some people call it the dirty side. Typically on the east side of a hurricane or a tropical storm, that's where most of your rough weather is. And this is exactly the same here. What's on the west is very, very little, okay? So as you go through tonight, this is this evening, 9 o'clock, the yellow area there, that is your winds of 40 to 58 miles an hour, okay? In my opinion, closer to 40 than 58, okay? And along the coast. I seriously doubt you're going to see, outside of maybe a quick gust, anything more than 40 or 45 across the area. That's tonight. Now, tomorrow in the overnight, hurricane force winds develop as the storm probably becomes a hurricane. Heck, it could be a hurricane at 5 o'clock. The new advisory comes out in 3 hours. It says 65 right now. It needs to be 75. But you see, that's when the leading edge of the stronger winds goes in the Panhandle, but we are still, every bit of the area that was in this 50 to or 40 to 58 is still in 40 to 58. And even 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, northern counties, the Nature Coast, 40 to 58, while hurricane conditions expected in the Big Bend area as the storm moves onshore. And then it kind of slows down. This is Tuesday morning, overnight Monday into Tuesday, and then the winds go in that direction, okay? So, Shay, we still have that tornado warning, or is that just about done? Let's check that, and then we're going to go over to Nadine. But again, there's a look at the tornado watch is in effect, I believe, until 8 o'clock tonight.
Warning expired.
Warning has expired. So while I got as long-winded as I did, the warning is now expired. So there you go. That's a good thing. I have a feeling there will be others, lots more. So let's go ahead and go to Nadine and see how things are shaping up with the news side of this. Nadine?
You never have to apologize for going long-winded, especially in that case. Good afternoon, Tampa Bay. I'm Nadine Yanis, taking over for our continuing coverage of Tropical Storm Debby. We're going to toss it back over to Dennis.
Yeah, real quick, I think you're having some mic issues, but and we'll go back to Nadine in just a second. But at this point, again, as Shay just mentioned, you know, the outer bands, there people at home are like, I thought we were done hearing him talk. Okay, anyway, so the outer bands are right here, and that's typically where you are going to see the possibility of another tornado or two. Remember, the tornado watch and the tornado warning, I've already seen on Facebook and places, you know, across the area, I've seen people confused about it. I love the taco watch and taco warning meme, if you've seen it. A taco watch, all the ingredients of the tacos are there. You got your lettuce and your cheese and your shells, and they're all separate bowls. And then the taco warning, it's a full-fledged taco, which sounds good at this time of the day. But my point is, when we have the watch, the red color, all the ingredients are there for the possibility of a tornado, but you do not have the actual tornado until you have a warning. All right, so here's a look at Futurecast, okay? I didn't show this map, believe it or not, so I will show you this one. So this takes us through 4 o'clock this afternoon. The center is right here. All the rain, okay? Look at your next band. Now, this is something that I think we'll have to pay pretty close attention to, because as this storm gets stronger, and it's going to, it'll tighten up quite a bit. So the bands that are closer to the center will be stronger as it kind of contracts in, like the whole figure skating spinny thing that I was talking about. Now you go inland, the rain chances drop even further. So while there are some parts of Polk County, Hardy, DeSoto Highlands picking up rain right now, I think there's going to be some really nasty bands setting up this evening along the coast. And in some of those bands, it is certainly possible that there could be a brief tornado or a water spout, okay? So the deans are there saying, I'm ready. Like, no, I'm talking again. I got to get into this.
I'm just letting you know. We're good. We're good.
Okay. So anyway, there's your center right there, okay? And you notice, though, by later tonight, look how the bands contract even more and get closer to the center away from us. So by later on tonight, you could make the argument our inland spots aren't going to have much of anything. The heavier rains will be that imaginary line that I so often talk about, I-75 west, okay? And then as the storm moves north and east, it'll push the bands back east over toward those inland spots. So if you live east of I-75, you're going to get a break, but then later on tonight and tomorrow, it's going to go back again. And this is at landfall tomorrow morning, where we will definitely have to watch the surge possibility for Citrus County. I think we all know areas like Crystal River have surge issues, and you go a little farther north to Levy County. Cedar Key has the same kind of issues as well. So we'll be watching that very, very closely. And then finally, by later Monday into Tuesday, things clear out. Let's try this again. Take two. Nadine, what's up?
We were not rushing you, Dennis. Trust me, we'll listen to you all day. All right, good afternoon, Tampa Bay. I'm Nadine Yanis. We are taking over for our continuing coverage of Tropical Storm Debby. We will be here for the rest of the night with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips and Shay as well. We already have our crews positioned all across the Bay Area, from Port Richey to Tarpon Springs, Tampa to St. Pete. In addition to the crews positioned across our area, we have crews across our state as well, as our sister stations will be positioned to show you what the impacts are from Fort Myers, West Palm Beach, and Tallahassee. Of course, all of this as we are committed to keeping you informed and safe throughout the event of this storm. We already have some reports of flooding and outages already coming in. As any updates come in, you will see at the bottom of your screen, periodically we'll update you with closures, any impacts to the airports, any absolute latest on power outages that you might need as we go through the evening. That should be updated, and you'll see that going across the bottom of your screen here. All right, let's go ahead and get out to our crews. We want to check back in with ABC Action News reporter JJ Burton. He has been near the St. Pete Pier all morning and afternoon. JJ, how are the conditions out there now? We know those bans have been coming in.
Good afternoon. So it was quiet out here for a minute, and then I believe, Mother Nature knew we were going to be live, and then the rain started coming, the wind started picking up, but you can see behind us still seeing some movement. But we've been out here all morning long, started out here around 5 o'clock, and it was just windy but calm. And then we got the rain coming, and then the wind got picked up, and you can see it now, you can hear it now, you can see the waves out there, how this is going, really going a lot faster than it was before. And if you zoom in over there, you can see the docks over there moving up and down in the water. That's going even faster, as well as those boats are shaking. Again, there's some people out there sleeping on those boats. Hopefully they're okay. I don't know how they're out there, but they're out there. I did drive around some parts of St. Pete earlier, and there are some flooded areas. There's some minor tree branches down and things like that, but not too much damage. But again, the flooding is definitely going to happen because it floods here all the time, especially in the Shore Acres neighborhood, so watch out for that. But we're going to stay here because the rain is coming and the wind is coming, and this is our safest place. We got to keep the equipment working and not broken. John, as my photographer telling me, I was trying to go out there, and John was like, no. Stay here, stay dry and stay safe. So we're going to stay out here, but we'll let you know what's going on throughout the rest of the day. Reporting live in St. Pete, I'm JJ Burton, ABC Action News.
Yeah, JJ, we definitely want you to stay safe. We're also continuing to see more power outages across the Tampa Bay area. This is a live look right now of the outage map from Duke Energy. Duke Energy just said that the estimated time to restore power to most customers is going to be Monday at 8 p.m. If you see here, the numbers are on your screen as well as zoomed in right there. However, many of the customers' power could be restored sooner than that as well, about 1,000 here across the Bay Area. The president of Duke Energy actually spoke with us over Zoom today with so many people dealing with outages already. We asked if people have already lost power and what should they do over the course of this event.
Customers are out of service today. They can go to our outage map and they can look at that. We have information in there that includes also the estimated times of restoration. So as I said, right now we don't even have an estimated time of restoration for Debby as it makes landfall. But that kind of information is all part of our normal process. But what I would say is for customers they need to prepare for this storm. Even if it's not exactly in the path that they are seeing maybe on TV, here in the Tampa Bay area, it could mean, in addition to the tides, it could mean flooding, down trees, those kinds of things. And we just need to make sure that customers are prepared. They're staying safe. They're staying away from debris or deep water that they may not have any idea what's in the water, how deep it is. But also just to continue to look at our resources at duke-energy.com. And we really encourage them to download our app because in that way we can proactively share information with them as well.
And I'm also just checking out the map right now. Clearwater, about 643 outages. St. Pete, 700. Up towards Citrus County, 930 outages already reported there. About 163 in Spring Hill. You can actually check these power outages in real time online right now on abcactionnews.com. There's also currently a ground stop for flights originating from within the United States attempting to fly into Tampa International Airport right now. Those flights are experiencing delayed departures. Flights departing from TPA are currently not impacted. We know that the airport yesterday said they wanted to stay operational. It was going to come down to the actual flights. The FAA may be able to provide some additional details out of this. All right, here's the latest. Out of 494 flights out of TPA, 120 have been canceled already, 176 delayed. We also want to remind you that President Joe Biden has approved the emergency declaration for Florida. That means federal disaster assistance is available to the state to help with response efforts following Tropical Storm Debby. It does authorize FEMA to start coordinating all disaster relief efforts as well to help people who may need it the most. They're also able to provide appropriate assistance to save lives here, protect property, public health, and safety. All right, shifting now to Hillsborough County. Leaders there are warning people to be careful this evening as Tropical Storm Debby approaches, and do not drive or walk in flooded waters. Actually, driving in, I saw a lot of ponding already. Crews have done their best to clear drains and make sure that they are working properly to help mitigate flooding in the county. They've also handed out more than 24,000 sandbags, but the ground is already really saturated. That means we could see rising water still. During a news conference today, Governor Ron DeSantis said most deaths from flooding are people who decide to drive through floodwater. It only takes 1 foot of moving water to move a vehicle here. Hillsborough County officials say you don't know what is in that floodwater and what could be dangerous.
We don't know exactly what's at the bottom of those waters. Down power lines, obviously very dangerous. And if you're driving through deep waters, you don't know. Are there holes? Are there, anything that could potentially create a hazard for you and where you have to be rescued? Now you put yourself in a position where you need the assistance of fire department.
The county does say that the best advice is to turn around, find another route, or stay off the roads completely if there's a flood watch or warning in your area. And while we don't have any video right now, this map right here from the city of Tampa does show flooding along Bayshore Boulevard right now. This is an active map that shows where flooding is right now. The blue dots show confirmed flooding along Bayshore. What we do know is that Tampa Police Department is closing Bayshore Boulevard down from Platt Street to Bay Boulevard, along with numerous side streets due to flooding. They are asking you to avoid this area. Don't drive on the roadways, again, that have standing water. If you happen to live along Bayshore, have some images of that. Don't drive through it, but if you can send us some of those images, that would be great. State leaders also continue to monitor Tropical Storm Debby. Our Capitol reporter, Forrest Saunders, did a phone interview with Senator Rick Scott. We aired part of that interview within the last hour. Forrest also asked Senator Scott about how this storm could impact property insurance for Florida homeowners. Take a listen.
When it comes to property and some of the concerns with the property insurance market, I mean, we've seen some stabilization. Do you feel like, from your perspective, that the market's in a better place than it has been and is ready for something like this?
Well, you've got to work on it every year. What I had to do when I was governor, we worked hard to make sure that we had a robust insurance market. We recruit companies like State Farm was saying they were leaving, and we worked on making sure they were coming back. So we've got to keep our companies here. We've got to make sure that there's no fraud. A lot of the problems we have with regard to the cost of property insurance is the fraud. And so what you have to do is you have to constantly crack down on the fraud that's going on. Where it sounds really nice, I'm going to get that free roof, but if you didn't pay for that, if that's not the insurance, what the expectation was, and you're just taking advantage of it, well, you and others eventually were going to pay for this. So we've got to make sure there's no fraud going on. Get a lot of insurance companies into the state and make sure that they can, stay in business. Because if they don't, if we have fewer options, guess what? Your property insurance is going to continue to go up.
And we did get that disaster declaration pre-landfall from the White House. You feeling like that's going to be able to move things along a little bit more efficiently in case we do see a major disaster?
Well, it's very helpful to FEMA. It's very helpful to the Department of Homeland Security to provide resources to the state. So it's naturally tied to everybody doing their job. We have the resources, and we got to make sure that the FEMA is fully funded. So that's one thing I met with the head of FEMA about last week. At the federal level, we got to make sure they're funded. But it starts with you. Keep yourself safe. Keep your family safe. If you need to get to a shelter, go early. I can just tell you, what I'm watching right now in Naples. You wouldn't want to get out in this, and so it's going to be a lot worse up in the Panhandle. So if you think you might have to go to a shelter, get to a shelter as early as you can, and pick the best spot. And stay safe.
Senator, anything else that you think is important to get out there, or that you want to remind Floridians about?
Take it serious. The big thing is take this seriously. They take this very seriously. Look, you can always, evacuate and go to a friend's house or go to a shelter. It might not be the most comfortable thing, but the most comfortable thing is stay alive.
Yeah. I really appreciate your time, sir. I know you're busy, so thank you for taking a few minutes. We're going to get this out to our stations, make sure everybody gets a chance to hear it.
Okay. Take care. Stay for us. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right, 2:30 on this Sunday, we just got these images in from the Citrus County Sheriff's Office. Last night, the Community Emergency Response Team actually assisted in an emergency evacuation of the Crystal River Health and Rehab Center. They moved every patient into 4 buses and 1 cargo vehicle, taking them to their sister facility. As we have reported, Zone A for Citrus County is now under a mandatory evacuation for Tropical Storm Debby. That is all low-lying areas west of US 19 and some additional low-lying areas east of US 19. We also continue to get new video into our newsroom. This is at Clearwater Beach right by Rockaway Grill with some clouds and rain out there, bracing for Tropical Storm Debby, and you see those white caps as the Gulf looks pretty angry out there. Our chief photographer, Eric Moore, is also moving up the Pinellas County coast, sending us new images of the beaches. This video is from Indian Rocks Beach. Same thing again, you see some people out there, but you're gonna wanna be very careful, especially as that storm surge continues to come through. As Dennis mentioned, there is a storm surge warning for Pinellas County. And they've done a lot of work, Dennis, to restore the beaches there, especially after Idalia wiped out a lot of them. And the storm is going to do a little bit of damage to that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's always a concern. I mean, beach erosion can really be a thing, especially when a storm slows down and just kind of hangs out. If for the folks remember Elena back in '85, it just sat out there for 3 days and just tore the beaches up. Luckily, this will not have that same kind of impact because it's moving pretty quickly. It is going to slow down eventually by tomorrow morning as it moves on shore and then become just a big rainmaker for northern Florida. So I want to show you the latest right now, and what we're going to be doing over the next few hours is, as conditions warrant, right, as we start to see heavier weather come in, maybe we get some images or some video of storm surge coming into certain areas. The only area, Shay and I were just talking about this, so Englewood is reports of the water over the seawall. It's down to the south, right? Water over the seawall and about a foot of water in the roads in Englewood. So with a southerly wind behind the center of the storm, over the next several hours, we are going to see that water coming in this direction. But at that point, we're going to be going from a high tide to a lower tide. So that'll help. That won't completely eliminate any of the storm surge issues, but it's going to help. And I'm sure, again, a couple hours ago, a lot of you folks were out and all of a sudden you got the beep, beep, beep on your phone and, big storm surge warning, extremely urgent, this sort of thing. I mean, if they want to get your attention, they're getting your attention. And with good reason, because storm surge is that one thing we always say, you hide from the wind, you run from the water. And unfortunately, there have been storms in the past, and I know folks who live on the water know what I'm talking about, especially with Ada. I mean, that was kind of unexpected. I mean, how many times have we heard it's just a tropical storm, but it can push a lot of water? This is getting stronger, so certainly it is going to be pushing water as well. And I would expect that there will be some spots that are going to be talking about storm surge in our area through the evening. However, again, at least the one bit of good news is that water is going to be about a foot lower than it would have been if it had been 6 hours earlier, because the tide will be going down. Still very, very heavy rains. There's your center. I'm not calling it an eye because it's not an eye yet. And that is about 85 miles to the west of Pinellas County. Shay, could you do me a favor? Could you check the 2 o'clock advisory and scroll down and see how far out tropical storm force winds extend? It'll say that in the advisory. My guess is they'll probably say tropical storm force winds extend about 70 or 80 miles. Because if you look, I mean, that's where the edge of the heavier rain is, and we're kind of right on the fringe. And if this is, and this is important, if this is moving north-northwest, the bulk of the heaviest rain and the heaviest wind is going to stay just offshore. 140 miles. Oh, wow. So according to the Hurricane Center, they're saying that tropical storm force winds extend another 60 miles inland. I'm not. No, it's hard to find rates. I'm going to show you here. Yeah, no, I believe you. I believe you. Shay's like, no, let me show you. I'm like, no, they're saying that. So that's a little surprising because we're not really showing sustained tropical storm force winds anywhere in the Bay Area. So that's That's interesting. But nevertheless, the hurricanes, look, whatever they say, I'm telling you, the heaviest winds are going to stay offshore. They will. There's no doubt in my mind. Might there be some gusts, 40 to 50? Absolutely. And maybe some of these extend northeast away from the center, not just due east from our. That's certainly a possibility as well. But my point being is the center stays far enough offshore that the heaviest wind will also stay offshore. All right? Tropical storm warnings remain in effect in the blue. Hurricane warnings remain in effect in the red. Storm surge. I want to mention this if you missed it earlier, because I think this is really important. And you can use this information for the rest of your life if you live on the coast and you're always worried about storm surge, because over the last 5 or 10 years, our storm surge threat seems to be rising for whatever reason, right? We've had more issues with it, even with tropical storms. When you hear, no matter what you're listening to, whatever channel, whatever radio station, whatever spot on social media, when you hear the numbers, the prediction of what a storm surge is, 3 to 5 Arapahoe North, 2 to 4 other areas. When you hear that number, that comes directly from the Hurricane Center, all right? And their definition of that number is the most reasonable worst case scenario. By definition, they are giving you the most reasonable worst case scenario. So when you look at these numbers, do we often get the worst case scenario? I'd argue no. I mean, we certainly do sometimes, but more often than not, to me, in life, you get it more in the middle, right? It just kind of averages out in the middle. So when you hear these numbers, it's important to hear them because you'll know in the back of your mind, okay, this is the worst it could get, but it's probably going to be a little bit better than that. I really think that's the way you should look at storm surge for all of this, no matter where, okay? And again, if you're new to the area, if you do not live on the Gulf or with access to the bay, you do not have to worry about storm surge. I mean, and I'm talking even rivers that are attached to it. If it's salt water and it's coming in from the Gulf, that is storm surge. Nothing to do with rainwater. Nothing to do with rainwater, okay? So that's important. So obviously, the farther north you live, the more the storm surge is a possibility, simply because you're closer to the center of the storm that is getting stronger. The entire area under a flood watch through tomorrow, for obvious reasons. 65-mile-an-hour winds. The Hurricane Center is now saying it's going to get up to about 90, still Cat 1. You look at that center, which is obviously right about there. I'll tell you, it kind of looks to me like there's a little bit of drier air trying to come in from the southwest here. And because it certainly doesn't look like your classic hurricane, right? Or tropical storm. I mean, it doesn't. And it doesn't have a lot of time now. It's got 15 hours, 16 hours, give or take, before landfall. Now, that's still time for it to get stronger. The Hurricane Center is going 90 miles an hour. But I know a lot of folks, they focus, maybe hyper-focus on worst-case scenario. I mean, it's kind of what some people do. They hear what the forecast is, but what if? So the whole worst-case scenario thing is in people's minds. I get it. This does not have the same kind of worst-case scenario like an Ian or an Irma or Charlie or whatever those big storms are, because those were already Cat 4 and Cat 5 hurricanes down here. They were already totally developed. This was a wave and didn't even come up depression until a day and a half ago, right? So this does not have the same opportunity to do what those storms did, and not to mention, and this is a good thing, it's a pretty big storm in terms of just geographical size. The bigger the storm, the harder it is and the longer it takes for it to develop. Now, on the flip side, when it's a big storm, it also doesn't fizzle out as fast. So it's kind of a good news, bad news. But in this case, it's good because it's so big, it's a lot harder for it to actually really ramp up to that buzzsaw look that I think we all dread seeing something like that. So yes, there is going to be some intensification, and the Hurricane Center last advisory, a new one comes out in about 2 hours. They're bringing it to 90 miles an hour at landfall tomorrow morning, Cat 1 hurricane. Might it be 95 or even 100? Sure. But it's also important to remember, when you see this number right there, and when you hear the words maximum sustained winds, that is almost always in a little bitty spot in that storm. It's not the whole wind. More often than not, those winds, those strong winds, are in a 2 or 3 mile area, right around the eye wall. And then you go 10 miles out and it's not nearly as strong. That is just of almost all hurricanes, that is the same way. So again, you're kind of seeing the worst case scenario with this number, but the reality is a lot of that area will be nowhere near those numbers. And I'm going to bring Tallahassee up as an example, because if this were to turn into a hurricane overnight, I guarantee you hurricane force winds would probably only be 20 or 25 miles out from the center. So with a track like this, it's even unlikely that Tallahassee would even get sustained hurricane force winds, certainly gusts to hurricane force tomorrow. And I've been bringing this up because obviously a lot of us have kids and family in that area. So tomorrow, certainly there's the possibility with those big trees that they have in Tallahassee that there's going to be some power outages. It's certainly going to be a headache, but is it going to be a devastating system? And I think when people in the Panhandle, the first thing that comes to mind with a hurricane like that is Michael, several years ago. I mean, Michael was a hurricane and went from a 1 to a 5 in a couple of days. I mean, it just, and you probably saw the video of what it did in Mexico Beach. I mean, just annihilated some of those areas. This does not have that same opportunity for a number of reasons, but it certainly can and likely will get stronger as landfall occurs tomorrow morning with winds of 90 miles an hour, give or take. I mean, this could change. At 5 o'clock, this could say 100. But it's not going to change that dramatically in the short period of time, which is now about 18 hours before landfall. All right? So, spaghetti models, that's the next question. Yeah, but my kids even said it this morning. Dad, how do we know it's not going to make a right turn into Tampa? Because it's not. It's just, it's just not, right? There are certain things that have to come into play for storms to change path the way that they do dramatically. None of those situations are out there in our area. Zero, none, okay? Take that one off the table. It's not going to happen. Now, might there be a little bit of a jog to the right upon landfall? Yeah, and that happens more often than not. But nothing so dramatic that all of a sudden it's going to go, and it's just going to make a right turn. That's not going to happen. So storms down here have way more of an opportunity to make more of a turn, especially with a trough coming down, which we just don't have. All right, so take that one off the table, all right? Again, I don't want to minimize it at all, but for our area with surge, a possibility. But at the same time, let's have realistic expectations of what we're going to see. And we're going to see winds gusting between 40 and 45 up to 50 miles an hour. How strong are our winds in our afternoon thunderstorms? 50-ish, 55. Severe thunderstorms are 60. So liken this to incredibly heavy rainfall for periods of time, and then that goes away until the next band comes. And within those bands, you're going to have these winds. And sometimes even outside the bands, you're going to have those winds. But as the storm pulls away tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., we still got some solid wind. And then it moves north, and then the wind slowly starts to go away. Rainfall, again, from this point on, we're talking about rain anywhere. Inland areas, a lot lower. I have no doubt I'm going to be reading the comments. I live in Bartow. I live in Lake Wales. Where the heck's all the rain that you guys were talking about? I just know what's going to happen. And I continue to say, because you're not going to get that much rain in those inland spots. Don't hear that part. But along the coast, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain. And boy, as Floridians, we know that you can get 3 or 4 inches of rain in an hour in one of our strong thunderstorms. It's happened almost daily for the last month in the middle of our thunderstorm season, our rainy season. So these are the numbers from this point on. There will be some flooding. There's already been flooding. We have reporters out all over the place. We're hearing about some flooding in Tarpon Springs. We're hearing about some flooding in Port Richey. We're hearing about some flooding in Clearwater. And what was that again? What was that? Okay, all right. So anyway, in other words, they're saying Dennis Rapp. So why would they do that? So anyway, with rains of 4, 5, 6 inches along the coast, less inland, that's where we are right now. And that actually timed out well, because that's kind of a real good update until the 5 o'clock advisory comes out. And once the 5 o'clock advisory comes out, we'll see what the numbers do if they change. I don't think they will. From now until tonight, if you can hang at home and not go anywhere, that would be the best move, because those downpours and that flooding, they're coming down. I mean, you're not going to have to worry a lot about wind out there. You're really not. But the water is certainly the biggest issue. Nadine?
Perfect day to just stay in, enjoy the movies, Dennis. Absolutely. Also, you were talking about flooding Bayshore Boulevard, impassable and closed right now for flooding. So, all right, well, now let's go ahead and get a check-in Newport Richey. Our Eric Waxler is live there in Pasco County. Eric, what are you seeing? I do see some ponding and flooding behind you right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are in Newport Richey, just off of US 19 on Main Street. And this is a good example of what happens on so many side streets, as you see right here. They do have barricades up, but people live back here, so they're basically pulling up. And if they have a big truck, they're going through. If they have a car, they're kind of deciding, should we go through? And it's always better to be cautious when going through ponding effect like this, because it can definitely do some damage, and we've seen so many cars get stuck. We'll see if in the next couple minutes, when we're on live, somebody comes through. Here's a car coming up right now, but as you see that one, I don't think we'll have too much trouble getting through the water. We've seen off and on heavy rain here this morning in West Pasco County. Oh, there no speed limit for him. He doesn't mind the wake that he caused there. US 19 just out there, no problem. Lots of people out on the streets right now, despite this pending storm. So we'll see, as conditions maybe get worse, if that picks up. Now, I covered Tropical Storm Debby here in Pasco County, also named Tropical Storm Debby back in 2012 it was. And we saw so many areas around here with serious flooding, especially when the rivers crested and the Elfers area was heavily flooded. Parts of US 19 flooded. We don't know. We hope it won't come to that as high tide comes in and as the storm comes through. But right now, it's mostly situations like this, side streets with standing water like this that can cause some trouble for people just trying to get home or get out of the house for a little bit. So it's definitely something to be cautious of right now. But as far as the rain, it's been off and on right now, just light, and we'll see how conditions change as the day continues. Live in Newport Richey, I'm Eric Waxler, ABC Action News.
Yeah, Eric, it's always kind of like you hold a breath whenever a car comes through those flooded waters. Definitely not worth the risk. Thank you so much. We will check back in with you in a few hours. All right, some more flooding happening in our southern counties this afternoon. Take a look at this video. Bradenton Police Department posted this. The Ducks having a great time playing in some flooded streets here. Sometimes we also see kids go out and play. I never recommend that, obviously, because you never know what's in the water. Ducks having a good time again in Manatee County, where they are encouraging evacuations in Zone A there in Manatee County. Southwest Florida, they are really starting to feel the impacts of Tropical Storm Debby this afternoon. Reporter Austin Shadorowski is actually tracking the high tide in Inglewood.
It's high tide, and Minnesota Key is really seeing the effects of Tropical Storm Debby right now. Take a look behind me. You can see these massive waves are causing water to come up this entire beach right now as they crash down onto shore. Take a look at this video from Blind Pass Beach. You can see the water rushing up the entrance walkway and completely flooding Minnesota Key Road. Cars were creating even more waves just trying to drive through it. That water was even pushing large rocks up onto the road, and they were just everywhere. Holly Romelius has lived on Minnesota Key for 8 years and said storm surge like this gets her worried.
I think everybody is a little concerned now after Hurricane Ian because it was so bad. So everybody's still trying to rebuild.
Last year, Blind Pass Beach got completely washed out from Hurricane Idalia. So with the 2 to 4 feet of storm surge we were expecting here, we've been keeping a close eye on things. Reporting on Minnesota Key, I'm Austin Shagarotsky.
All right, we want to go ahead and take you through some more video of serious flooding happening in Fort Myers right now. This is video that we got in, and you see this car is stuck in the water there. You've also got tow trucks attempting to pull them away, but the tow trucks are also underwater there. We also know that auto insurance right now is so high for everybody, so you definitely don't want to get caught up in that. This is also video from Fort Myers Beach. Oh, this is hard to see. Some pretty incredible images, serious flooding going in and out of restaurants and businesses on the beach. As you know, this was the area that was hit hard during Hurricane Ian 2 years ago. I was actually working in Fort Myers Beach in that market when Hurricane Ian hit, and they've done so much work to revitalize and try to bring this area back. So to see it underwater just like this is very difficult. Any kind of flooding is going to be tough on their recovery there again on Estero Island in Fort Myers Beach. Just a little south of that, this is video from Naples about 30 minutes ago. You can see the waves out there, even some surfers. We always know that we're going to see some surfers out there. You're going to definitely want to be careful, especially in some of those coastal counties. At least here, some of our coastal counties have those evacuations in place. Again, this is in Naples, south of Fort Myers. We also have new video from Bayshore Boulevard. This just in from Tampa. You can see the flooding there, the water already rising. ABC Action News reporter Lydia Vasquez actually took this video. We're going to be checking back in with her live during our 5 o'clock hour. The city of Tampa has a live flooded map that shows that Bayshore is closed in this direction as well. And you see, look at that, the bay kind of coming up and above there with all of the rain and storm surge that we're feeling there. There's also currently a ground stop for flights originating from within the United States attempting to fly into Tampa International right now. Those flights are experiencing delayed departures. Again, these are flights coming into TPA, so if someone is visiting. Flights going out of TPA are not currently being impacted. The FAA will be able to provide some additional details on that. Of course, check with your flights, your particular airlines. Out of 496 flights out of Tampa, 129 have been canceled, 180 have been delayed. We want to remind you that President Joe Biden has approved the emergency declaration for Florida. That means that the federal disaster assistance is now available to our state to help with response efforts following Tropical Storm Debby. This authorizes FEMA to begin coordinating all disaster relief efforts to help people who may need it the most. They're also able to provide appropriate assistance to save lives, protect property, public health, and safety. Our Hillsborough County leaders are also warning people to be careful this evening as Debby approaches, and do not drive or walk in flooded waters. Crews have done their absolute best to try to clear those drains and make sure that they are working properly to help mitigate the flooding across Hillsborough County. They handed out more than 24,000 sandbags. The ground already really saturated, which means that we could just still see that rising water over the next few hours into tomorrow. During a news conference earlier, Governor Ron DeSantis said that most deaths from flooding are people who are driving through flooded water. It only takes a foot of moving water to move a vehicle. Hillsborough County officials say you don't know what is also in that flood water that could be dangerous.
We don't know exactly what's at the bottom of those waters. Down power lines, obviously very dangerous. And if you're driving through deep waters, you don't know, are there holes? Are there, anything that could potentially create a hazard for you and where you have to be rescued? Now you put yourself in a position where you need the assistance of fire department.
The county says the best advice, turn around and find another route, or just stay off the roads completely if there's a flood watch or warning in your area. All right, let's get right back out to Dennis for one more check with the latest here and a timeline as well of what we're going to see.
Yeah, so Nadine, and by the way, folks at home, this is kind of the time frame of what we're planning on doing for the next couple of hours. We're going to end the broadcast at 3 o'clock, and then I'm going to immediately start a DPL, which I'll be answering your questions and kind of going over the cancellations. Maybe Nadine, you gonna be able to help me like yesterday?
I got you. I can hop over.
Yeah, Nadine was awesome because yesterday she went on and was reminding folks about the cancellations and all the questions that you might have had. So we're gonna do that at 3 o'clock. And then at 3:30, we're going to take a live press conference. And then we're going to kind of go from there. Obviously, if we get any kind of tornado warnings of any sort, we'll jump right back in. And we still are under a tornado watch until 8 o'clock. Remember, taco watch, all the ingredients, but they're not a taco. Taco warning, it's a full-fledged taco. Tornado, it's the same thing. Tornado watch means all the ingredients are out there, but there's not a tornado. What there is a lot of rain. I mean, and it makes perfect sense that there would be the tornado possibility. You got this big old storm spinning out in the Gulf of Mexico, and you got all that spin, and inevitably within that spin, you could have smaller vortices or smaller areas of spin popping, and you'll have a funnel cloud or a brief tornado. And sometimes you'll have water spouts that will develop. And in fact, often you'll have water spouts that will develop and move on shore as a brief tornado. So the video that we've been seeing and the flooding that we've been hearing, from Fort Myers to Englewood, that's in our southern sections, and that makes a lot of sense because the winds are out of the south now in those spots. So that water's just coming right up, whereas the Bay Area, and even, the mouth of the Tampa Bay itself, we were showing you where Bayshore is, where the water's coming up in the seawall. still, you're not looking at that perfect wind direction for the water to come in. So everything is mostly offshore. Not completely, but mostly. So we have minor issues of flooding along the coast from surge. The ponding that we've been talking about and the flooding that Eric talked about, that's just rain. I mean, that's these incredibly heavy bands of rain that are coming in. And think about it. We have had a ton of rain over the last month. Not everybody, but a lot of us. So we're already kind of saturated anyway, even though with our soil and our sand, we can typically handle some decent water. We've had a lot of rain. And then you get these bands where they come in and it really comes down for a half hour, 45 minutes. You get 3 inches of rain in a half hour, you're going to get some flooding. So that's kind of where we are right now. Some of the heaviest rain and the heaviest wind has been down south. There's your center, and that center is about 85, 86 miles away from the coast of Pinellas County, and it's kind of moving in this general direction, all right? So it's going to continue that track. You always might get a little wobble in one way, and you can always tell, dare I say, the armchair or the inexperienced meteorologist out there, and believe it or not, there are a few on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok especially. So you get them and they see a little bit of a wobble to the right and they're like, oh, look, it's changing course, it's going right. No, storms that are elliptical, imagine if you roll an egg and it kind of wobbles, right? Well, if you're not looking at a perfectly circular center, you're looking at more of an elongated center, it's going to look like it wobbles as it moves, right? So when you look at the motion of these, that's what you're looking at. You're not looking at a turn, you're looking at a wobble. Debby has winds of 65 miles an hour. We have a tropical storm warning for our area, hurricane warning for the Panhandle, the Big Bend area. Storm surge update, again, that storm surge, I'm sure you got it on your phone, you know, all that beeping and loud noises on your phone at around noon when they issued the storm surge warning, extended it down to Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Manatee County. Again, I'll say this one last time. Well, one last time, probably not. I'll probably say another dozen times. But when you look at these numbers right there and you hear them for days on end, that is the Hurricane Center, by definition, saying that is the most reasonable worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. We don't always get worst case scenarios. We often don't. So when you look at the surge, certainly it is something you need to be concerned about, but don't always think it's going to be that high number because usually it isn't, all right? So, like I said, we have no warnings going on right now in terms of a tornado. We've got all that rain that's going to continue, and a flood watch remains in effect for the entire area through Monday. The storm will continue moving north, and we will continue our coverage, and you can answer questions and whatnot on DPL coming up in just a couple of minutes. Look for the link on my Facebook page and the station's Facebook page, and we'll have it for you as soon as we get a chance to get it all set up. Nadine?
Yeah, though we'll be over on DPL. We are going to take a break now here online. We are not going anywhere. Our weather team will continue to monitor these conditions, and we'll continue to bring you everything on abcactionnews.com. The governor is also expected to have a press conference here at 3:30. We will bring that to you live, again, back on the air in about 30 minutes for you. Until then, what we do know is take out your phone and scan this QR code on your screen right now. It will take you directly to abcactionnews.com/hurricane. You can find everything you need to know for Tropical Storm Debby, as well as tools that you may need for the rest of hurricane season as well. And if you don't have the ABC Action News app, be sure to download that right now. Just scan this QR code on your screen. This one will get you up-to-date information on Tropical Storm Debby as well, and all of your other local news, as well as how to download ABC Action News Plus on your favorite connected device. That's where you can stream us 24 hours a day. These are great tools to have, especially if you lose power. You don't have to miss a minute of our coverage. You can get it right there on your phone. All right, so right now we're going to return to regular scheduled programming. Of course, be sure to tune back here in about 30 minutes for the governor's press conference from Tallahassee again at 3:30. Then we're back at 5 o'clock for more special coverage of Tropical Storm Debby. Of course, we have crews all across the Bay Area for you. We will be here from 5 o'clock until 6:30 right here on your ABC Action News station. We will see you then. Please stay safe out there.